When was the last time you went a month without bathing? Victorians lived that reality regularly. In 1850s London, full baths were rare luxuries. Most people washed with a bowl of water and a cloth, what Victorians called a sponge bath, once a week if you were diligent, less often if you were poor, busy, or living through winter when heating water was expensive. The streets smelled of sewage and rotting waste. Diseases spread through contaminated water. Dental care meant occasional tooth pulling. Hair washing happened a few times per year at most. Modern hygiene is so automatic we forget how recently humans lived without it. The Victorians who built an empire and revolutionized industry did so while rarely bathing and never brushing their teeth. Let's explore what Victorian hygiene was really like. Bathing, the once-a-week luxury. Full immersion baths were uncommon events in Victorian households. The effort required made frequent bathing impractical for most families. A proper bath meant hauling multiple buckets of water from a pump or well, heating them on the stove, filling a portable tin tub, bathing, then hauling all the water back out. The entire process took hours and required significant fuel. Working-class families rarely managed this more than once a week, often less. Multiple family members used the same bath water to avoid repeating the labor. The cleanest person bathed first, the dirtiest last. Middle-class households had servants to handle water hauling, making regular baths more feasible. Upper-class homes might have dedicated bathrooms with fixed tubs by the late Victorian era. The daily washing routine relied on the washstand, a bedroom fixture with a basin, pitcher, and towel. Each morning, Victorians poured water into the basin and washed their face, hands, and accessible areas. This sponge bath represented standard daily hygiene. Medical opinion on bathing remained divided. Some doctors recommended frequent bathing for health. Others warned that too much bathing weakened the constitution. This medical confusion gave people additional excuses to avoid the laborious process. The smell must have been overwhelming by modern standards. People became accustomed to body odor because everyone smelled similar. Perfumes and colognes served essential functions rather than being optional luxuries. Subscribe to the channel if you bath more than once a month. Hair washing, a rare event. Victorians washed their hair infrequently. Once a month was common, less often wasn't unusual. The process was elaborate and time-consuming. Hair washing required heating large amounts of water, wetting the hair thoroughly, applying soap, rinsing multiple times, then drying. With hair lengths that reached waists or longer for women, drying alone could take hours or even days. Victorian soap was harsh, the same soap used for laundry. It stripped natural oils aggressively, leaving hair dry and brittle. After washing, hair needed treatment with oils or pomades to become manageable. Women's elaborate hairstyles discouraged frequent washing. Creating fashionable styles took hours. Washing meant dismantling the entire arrangement, waiting for hair to dry, then rebuilding from scratch. Many women maintained the same hairstyle for weeks. Between washings, Victorians managed hair odor and oil with powders and dry cleaning methods. Brushing vigorously with natural bristle brushes supposedly distributed oils and removed dirt. Head lice were common problems. Dense, rarely washed hair provided ideal habitat. Victorian household guides include detailed lice treatment instructions using various oils and chemical solutions. Men had some advantage with shorter hair that dried faster, but they still washed infrequently. Daily hair washing was considered eccentric and possibly harmful. The pomades and oils used between washings had strong scents. Combined with natural scalp oils and limited washing, Victorian heads produced distinctive smells that people accepted as normal. Dental hygiene, decay, and extraction. Victorian dental care was primitive and often non-existent. Most people never brushed their teeth. Those who did used tooth powders applied with fingers or rags. Toothbrushes existed but remained uncommon until late in the Victorian era. The bristles were natural boar hair and the brushes expensive. Working-class families couldn't afford them. Tooth powders contained various ingredients: chalk, charcoal, crushed cuttlebone, salt. Some formulations included toxic substances like lead or arsenic. The abrasive powders cleaned somewhat, but also wore down enamel. Dental decay was nearly universal. Sugar consumption increased during the Victorian era without corresponding improvements in dental care. By middle age, most Victorians had significant tooth decay, gum disease, and missing teeth. Dentistry focused on extraction rather than preservation. When teeth became too painful or infected, they were pulled. Anesthesia arrived during the Victorian period, but many extractions happened without it. Dentures were available but crude. Early dentures were carved from ivory or bone. Later versions used vulcanized rubber with human or animal teeth inserted. They fit poorly and were uncomfortable. The toothache was accepted as normal life. Victorian literature frequently mentions characters suffering from dental pain. Patent. Medicines promising toothache relief sold well because the problem was so common. Bad breath was universal and unremarkable. Everyone's teeth were decaying. Breath freshening involved chewing herbs or using mouth rinses, providing temporary relief at best. Laundry. The weekly marathon. Laundry day was the most dreaded household task. The process took an entire day and required intense physical labor. Monday was traditional laundry day across Victorian society. The process began before dawn, with heating massive amounts of water in copper boilers. Clothes soaked overnight in lye solution to loosen dirt. The washing involved scrubbing each item by hand on washboards, rubbing with harsh soap, pounding with wooden paddles. Stains received special treatment with various chemicals and substances. White linens were boiled to maintain their color. Rinsing required multiple changes of clean water. Wringing removed excess water through physical twisting or mechanical wringers for those who could afford them. The wringing process was exhausting and hard on hands. Drying depended on weather. Good weather meant hanging clothes outside on lines. Rain meant drying indoors near fires, filling the house with damp clothing for days. Winter drying was particularly challenging. Ironing followed drying. Heavy flat irons heated on stoves smoothed wrinkles from everything. The irons weighed several pounds each. Multiple irons heated while one was in use, swapped out as they cooled. Ironing took hours and required skill to avoid scorching. The entire process meant most clothes were worn multiple times between washings. Underwear and shirts closest to skin were washed weekly. Outer garments went months between cleanings. Spot cleaning and brushing maintained appearances between full washings. Working-class women did their own laundry, plus often took in laundry from wealthier families for additional income. They spent multiple days weekly washing clothes, their own and others. The physical toll was enormous. Middle and upper-class households employed laundresses or sent laundry out. Professional laundries handled the heavy work, though their methods were harsh on fabrics. Clothes wore out quickly from the aggressive washing and ironing. The harsh soaps and chemicals used in Victorian laundry damaged fabrics and skin. Laundresses developed rough, cracked hands from constant exposure to lye and hot water. Skin conditions from laundry work were occupational hazards. If you're still here after learning about Victorian laundry, subscribe for more reality checks from the past. The streets, open sewers. Victorian London streets were essentially open sewers. Human and animal waste, garbage, and industrial runoff created conditions almost unimaginable today. Horses provided primary transportation. A single horse produces 15 to 35 pounds of manure daily. London had hundreds of thousands of horses. The manure piled in streets, ground into mud during rain, dried into dust during dry weather. The smell was constant and overwhelming. Human waste disposal was inadequate. Many houses had cesspits, holes in the ground where sewage collected. These were supposed to be emptied regularly, but often weren't. They overflowed into streets or leaked into groundwater. The emptying process, done at night, added to street filth. Chamber pots were emptied from windows into streets with minimal warning. Walking London streets meant dodging falling waste. The phrase gardez-vous, corrupted French for watch out for water, supposedly warned pedestrians, but accidents were common. Dead animals, cats, dogs, horses, lay in streets until removed or rotted away. Butcher shops threw offal into streets. Markets left vegetable waste and other garbage where it fell. Rats thrived in these conditions, spreading disease. The Thames River received all this waste. It wasn't a river by modern standards, but an open sewer. During summer, the smell became unbearable. The great stink of 1858 was so severe that Parliament couldn't meet. Members soaked curtains in chloride of lime to mask the odour. Rain made streets impassable mud mixed with sewage. Crossing streets required stepping stones or paying crossing sweepers who cleared paths through the filth. Women's long dresses dragged through this muck, becoming contaminated with waste and disease. Disease spread rapidly through contaminated water. Cholera outbreaks killed thousands. Typhoid, dysentery, and other waterborne diseases were common. The connection between sanitation and disease was only beginning to be understood during the Victorian period. The smell permeated everything. Clothes, hair, homes, all absorbed the odours from streets. People became somewhat nose-blind to the worst of it through constant exposure, but visitors to London frequently commented on the overwhelming stench. The Great Stink and Reform. The summer of 1858 forced change. The Thames had been terrible for years, but that summer reached crisis levels. Unusually hot weather intensified decomposition of waste in the river. The smell became so severe that Parliament couldn't function. Members fled the building. Curtains soaked in chloride of lime provided minimal relief. The situation was untenable. This crisis created political will for comprehensive sewer reform. Engineer Joseph Bazalgette proposed an ambitious new sewer system for London. The project received rapid approval. The smell had convinced even reluctant politicians. Bazalgette's system was massive. Over 300 miles of sewers carrying waste away from the Thames before releasing it downstream. The construction took years and employed thousands of workers. The engineering was brilliant, creating a system so well designed that much of it still functions today. The new sewers didn't solve everything immediately, but they marked a turning point. Waste no longer flowed directly into the Thames at the city centre. The river began recovering. The impossible summer stench became less severe. Public health improved dramatically following sewer construction. Cholera outbreaks declined. Typhoid rates dropped. The direct link between sanitation infrastructure and disease reduction became undeniable. The success in London sparked similar projects elsewhere. Other British cities built modern sewer systems. The model spread internationally. Victorian engineering solved the sanitation crisis that Victorian industrialization had created. The reform extended beyond sewers. Water companies improved water treatment. Building codes required better waste disposal. Public health became a governmental responsibility rather than individual problem. The transformation took decades. Early Victorian London was a cesspool. Late Victorian London had modern sanitation infrastructure. The generation that experienced both saw revolutionary improvements in daily life and health outcomes. Personal cleanliness products. Victorian personal hygiene products were limited compared to modern options. Soap was the primary cleaning agent for everything. Soap manufacturing improved during the Victorian era, making soap cheaper and more widely available. Early Victorian soap was harsh and expensive. By late Victorian times, commercial production had created affordable options. The soap was still harsh by modern standards, containing high concentrations of lye. It cleaned effectively but dried and irritated skin. Perfumes and colognes served essential functions, masking body odor and street smells. Victorian perfumes were strong because subtle scents couldn't compete with background odors. Deodorants didn't exist in any modern form. People dealt with underarm odor through frequent changes of undershirts and liberal application of perfumes and powders. Menstrual products were primitive. Women used rags that required washing and reuse, adding to laundry day workload. Razors for shaving were straight razors requiring significant skill. Many men visited barbers for shaving rather than attempting it themselves. Nail care was basic, trimmed with knives or scissors. Working-class people had rough, broken nails from manual labor. Skincare beyond basic washing barely existed. Cold cream and simple lotions provided some moisturizing. People lived with acne, rashes, and other skin problems. Disease and acceptance. Victorians lived with disease levels unthinkable today. Limited hygiene contributed directly to health problems that seemed normal at the time. Infant mortality was staggering. 1 in 4 children died before age 5. Many deaths resulted from poor sanitation and hygiene, contaminated water, inadequate waste disposal, limited understanding of disease transmission. Tuberculosis killed millions. The disease spread through close contact in crowded, poorly ventilated housing. Typhoid, cholera, and dysentery came in waves. Contaminated water supplies spread these diseases rapidly through communities. Death tolls from major outbreaks numbered in the thousands. Skin infections were common. Minor cuts became serious infections without proper cleaning and treatment. Parasites were normal parts of life. Lice, fleas, bedbugs. Most people had them at various times. Victorian doctors recognized that cleanliness improved health outcomes, but the mechanisms weren't clear. Germ theory developed during the Victorian period, gradually replacing older medical models. The gradual acceptance that invisible germs caused disease changed everything. Hand washing became recognized as disease prevention. Antiseptic techniques in surgery saved countless lives. By late Victorian times, attitudes toward hygiene were shifting. What seemed normal in 1850 appeared primitive by 1900. Class and hygiene. Victorian hygiene divided sharply along class lines. Wealth determined access to cleanliness. Upper-class Victorians could afford frequent laundering, multiple sets of clothes, servants to haul water and manage hygiene tasks. Their homes had better ventilation and plumbing. They lived in neighborhoods with cleaner streets and better sanitation. Middle-class families navigated between aspiration and reality. They wanted upper-class cleanliness, but had to manage with fewer servants and tighter budgets. Maintaining appearances required significant effort and expense. Working-class families faced impossible choices. Water cost money or required time to fetch. Fuel for heating water was expensive. Time for washing competed with time for earning money. Living in crowded housing made hygiene more difficult. The poorest Victorians had almost no hygiene options. Packed into tenements with shared privies and no running water, they lived in conditions that guaranteed disease. Cleanliness became a luxury they couldn't afford. These class divisions in hygiene contributed to class divisions in health. The wealthy lived longer, healthier lives. The poor died younger from preventable diseases. The sanitation reforms benefited everyone, but couldn't eliminate health inequalities rooted in poverty. Victorian morality linked cleanliness to virtue. The middle and upper classes viewed the poor as dirty through choice rather than circumstance. This moral judgment ignored the practical realities that prevented poor families from maintaining cleanliness. The public health reforms of the late Victorian era recognized that sanitation was a social responsibility. Individual hygiene mattered, but community infrastructure mattered more. Providing clean water and proper sewers benefited everyone regardless of personal habits. So Victorian hygiene was a world of monthly baths, rare hair washing, non-existent dental care, and streets filled with sewage. The people who built railways and established global trade did so while living in conditions we'd find unbearable. The Victorian era also saw the transformation. By recognizing the connection between sanitation and disease, Victorians created the foundation for modern public health. Which aspect of Victorian hygiene shocks you most? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this reality check about Victorian daily life, subscribe for more stories about how people really lived in the past. Thanks for watching.